What's up, everybody? This is Michael. Graveyard Shift. Wee hours of the night. All that good stuff. Happy Friday. Oh my gosh, we finally made it to Friday. It's about time. What a week. It's been crazy. It's been productive. It's been fun. It's been all those things into one, but I'm glad it's over now. All we got to do is get through Friday. Get to the weekend. So, like I said, happy Friday. And it's Payday Friday, too. Whoop, whoop. That's what I'm talking about. A little double dose of goodness. Anyways, all right, let's get to it. The answer to the previous trivia question, and this was a really good trivia question, folks. These are the kind of trivia questions I really live for. The answer to the previous trivia question was none other than Robert Bork and the concept of getting borked. Now, let's go back and start from the beginning. Robert Bork was a circuit judge when he was selected by President Ronald Reagan as a nominee for Associate Justice for the Supreme Court. So he's selected, right? And now he has to go through the confirmation process. Now, the Democratic-controlled Senate would go on a subsequent basis, when all was said and done, to block his nomination by a vote of 58 to 42. He didn't make the cut. He didn't make it in. Right, obviously. If you've never heard of Robert Bork and the confirmation proceedings from the mid 1980s, and one of the reasons why you never heard of him as a Supreme Court justice because he never got in. Right, even 6 Republicans ended up voting against him, which is kind of unheard of ever, much less at the time. It was essentially a failed confirmation process for a number of reasons, but it would ultimately go down in history as an organized campaign on many levels of harsh public criticism or vilification meant to attack or defeat a nominee or candidate for public office. That's kind of a definitional aspect of things. The entire process that I just described went down in history as getting borked. So his name became synonymous with this kind of a vilification and an attack on confirmation hearings. The term became so used in widespread fashion, both on TV and the public at the time, that it eventually would make its way into Merriam-Webster's dictionary. That's how much that getting borked and the Bork process that this whole thing produced would become a part of the English language. Wow. So a lot of factors were at play here. Now, okay, so let's check off some boxes. He was one of the first Supreme Court nominees to endure televised hearings. My beeper's going off. Hang on, let me just make sure that that's not one of mine on my side. No, that's on the other side, so we are all in the clear. So he was one of the first Supreme Court nominees to endure televised hearings, which pretty much automatically put a conservative and a Republican at a disadvantage, okay, as far as I'm concerned. That's what the talking heads said at the time. In this case, senators, the Democratic liberal senators, the chance to speak to the American people in mass. And people like Ted Kennedy at the time, who was huge at the time, really took advantage of this, right? Many on the conservative at the time underestimated this whole thing. And they underestimated, really, hang on, my phone's ringing, folks. I'll be right back. Okay, folks, I'm back. Sorry about that. Duty calls. That was a family member. I had to take that call. So, anywho, I forgot even where I left off. Many conservatives, rather, at the time, widely underestimated just how much liberals were going to fight back against Robert Bork, because he had some controversial stuff in his background. He did, in fact, have some controversial stuff in his background, and conservatives took this whole thing for granted. Democrats really took advantage of it, and the fact that it was going to be televised for one of the first times ever. So there was a lot of factors into play here. Politics, as you can imagine, obviously started rearing its ugly head, played its part for sure. And Robert Bork was horribly unprepared for these proceedings, and he was also overconfident. One of his friends happened to be Antonin Scalia, who was already on the court. Already had a post on the Supreme Court, who was very conservative, well-known, staunch conservative, a traditionalist, right, who had already kind of given him a wink and a nudge. Hey, man, you got this. Don't worry about it. So he was already a little overconfident. And the Democrats, during these proceedings, picked him apart, tore him to pieces, folks. and he did not make it in, obviously. Now, the very use of the term bork, or to get borked, began even before the contentious hearings for the Supreme Court nomination of Robert Bork had even concluded. So this was already starting to be kind of interjected into the American language. That's how fast it got inserted, really, into our everyday kind of discussions and water cooler talks, and it has been here ever since. You may have heard it surface. This is something how history kind of repeats itself. You may have heard getting borked, or the borking progress, surface during the confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh most recently. And that took place when all of the talking heads started saying, again, there's a borking going on. There's a borking progress. So his poor Robert Bork, his last name became synonymous with this kind of vilification of sorts that occurs during confirmation hearings. Like I say, and again, it was definitely mentioned and cited during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. In fact, any vaguely contentious confirmation hearing now invites a complete reference to borking, and his confirmation hearing is seen as the moment in Washington and in politics, really, when what is known as hyper-partisanship began. And this was certainly the case in the mid to late 1980s. And this was one of the reasons why it started. But again, poor Robert Bork. he just wanted to sit on the court. That's all he wanted to do. Anywho, some geek factoids. Bork subsequently resigned from his judgeship. He went back to being a circuit judge after all was said and done, and he subsequently ended up resigning from his judgeship on the D.C. Circuit in 1988, and he went on to teach, as most people in situations like this do. If you remember Anita Hill in the Clarence Thomas confirmation, she went on to teach. She is still a professor, actually. Robert Bork went on to teach at the George Mason University School of Law. He would write many books, and he was a good writer. He was a very good legal scholar, and he ended up being a pretty good writer, as a matter of fact. One of his more popular books, his more successful books, is called Slouching Towards Gomorrah, and I've read Slouching Towards Gomorrah a couple of times. And it's a conservative slant, obviously. You're talking about Robert Bork. But I would recommend you pick that book up and read it. It was really way ahead of its time, as far as I'm concerned. And it's got a lot of really good, interesting facts of the day. The book really still stands the test of time, as far as I'm concerned. If you're an avid reader like I am, it's one of those books. And you follow politics, it's one of those books you should probably have. Bork died in 2012. Now, if you go back and look at some of the YouTube footage of the Robert Bork confirmation hearings in which he was rejected by the vote of 58-42, you will notice some familiar faces. Like I said, I already referenced Ted Kennedy, but the person who is running the meeting, if you look very carefully, that is the future president of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden, absolutely, with a little more hair. Without question. Now, my question to you guys is, have you ever felt like you've been borked per the term, per the definition? I know I have. I've been in some situations where I felt like, man, I'm getting borked here, but that's just a way that something like that occurrence made its way into the English language and still resonates. All right, folks, let's keep this Friday going and get through it. Get to the weekend with a brand new trivia question for September 16th. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move the day along, move the week along. My goodness gracious. For September 16th, here we go with a single shot from a pistol. The largest land run in history begins on this day in 1893, when more than 100,000 people poured into the Cherokee Strip of this state to claim valuable land that had once belonged to Native Americans and had previously been considered worthless desert just years before. Have a good Friday, folks. A fabulous Friday. Thank you for being fabulous. Let's get to the weekend. Have some fun. Work hard, play hard, folks. Thanks for all you do. You guys are awesome. Peace out.